news, everyone.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I see dead people.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
And knowing is half the battle.
What, the deuce?
Must have the precious.
And I'll form the head.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take it away.
What you talking about, Willie?
Wow, infotainment.
Hello, this is Darryl from TransMissions, and I'm here at Toronto Comicon 2019, and I was able to sit down with legendary comic book writer Denny O'Neil, who wrote some of the great stories back in the pages of Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, the list goes on and on. But I was able to sit down with him for a one-on-one interview. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so my name's Darryl. I'm from the TransMissions podcast. We do a podcast about Transformers, and you have a very brief but very effective or very poignant effect in the Transformers fandom. I wondered if you could speak on it. What do you recall about your very small amount of time on that franchise?
Well, it has a lot to do with the office politics of Marvel at that time.
Okay.
And Jim Shooter's policy was, don't give any work to freelancers that we can give to editors.
Sure, okay.
Exactly the opposite of DC. DC, we were not supposed to give creative work to editors. And use the creative community. So, as a joke, I typed about 500 times on a piece of paper, squeeze, 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 and gave that to Shooter. And the next thing he had up was working on the Transformers. So I did my version of the Transformers, which he really disliked. So he gave the assignment to another editor, and I got some kind of kill fee. And didn't think about it until I read in the fan press that I created Optimus Prime. I might have, I don't have any memory, but I don't remember a lot of stuff.
That's the story that goes around, is that the name that stuck from your time on it was Optimus Prime.
I wouldn't say that's wrong. It never was very important to us. And that was the right attitude, because if you think, I'm a wonderful writer and I'm going to write this wonderful story, it psychologically it becomes about you.
Mm-hmm.
It should always be about the story.
Yeah.
I had arguments for years about whether to put an editor credit on, because I thought, as an editor, I should be invisible. I should be a part of the process nobody knows about.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people disagreed with that, and they made good cases. And in any case, that's the way we were doing it at DC.
Yeah.
I guess it was good to very belatedly begin to give the people who created all of this stuff some credit. They didn't make any money while they were alive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe and Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster won a lawsuit, and more directly important to us, Mary Fran and I went to see Batman versus Superman and walked out of there thinking that movie, I thought it was going to be bad. I didn't think it would be that bad. They didn't know what they were doing. But it did say Batman created by Bill Finger, or Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Bill Finger, yes.
And so when we got home, Mary called Bill's granddaughter, whom I know a little bit from doing panels with her.
Yeah.
And she said anytime that, Mary said, anytime Denny tried to give Bill any kind of credit, he got shot down. Was this a one-time only thing just for this movie? And Althea said, no, we finally won a lawsuit. My grandfather's name will be on anything that says Batman from now on.
Yes.
So Bill's been gone 20 years or more, but at least Althea and her children will have a comfortable life from now on.
Yeah, that's huge. And not to discredit the Siegel and Schuster one, that one broke the mold. The fact that they were in such dire straits at the time was terrible, absolutely terrible.
Well, Neil Adams and Jerry Robinson went to the executives and said, you people just spent like $100 million on a movie, and the guy who did the writing part of it is working in the mailroom, and the artist is legally blind. Isn't that a great story for the papers? That was pretty common for Jerry to do things like that. So, I mean, it worked. I have heard different figures. I heard that they got a $20,000 pension, a $50,000 pension. I heard that they got health benefits. That I'm inclined to believe.
Sure, yes.
And they died comfortably. I mean, the character has made billions with a B, as has Batman. And you'd think these other guys got really seriously rich, they could have spared a few dollars. But I always got along with all of them except Bob. I inadvertently and accidentally left his credit off a Batman story, and he called the company. He got somebody who had nothing to do with Batman. She was just an assistant who happened to be near the phone. But he gave her hell for my dissing him. And I didn't intentionally diss him, but I wish I had.
Now, during your time at DC, a fellow by the name of Jack Kirby was hired on. And can you talk about the feeling around the office when news broke that he was joining the team and coming over to work in the offices?
Well, everybody was happy about it. I think that too has to do with politics. And Jack was, the star of the field back then. Ron White, who is now gone, but was for a time one of Stan's assistants, said that Kirby was a genius at drawing for bad repro. And I think that's a very perceptive comment. His stuff worked fine with the lousy presses that they were using.
Right.
And without that, well, I mean, he was never bad, but he was not extraordinary except when he was fighting big machines out Illinois.
Yeah.
And I think the business of him not getting his artwork back was fans convincing him he was getting gypped, because he knew what the rules were. We all knew. I signed hundreds of those things. And I didn't necessarily like it, but at the time it seemed to be necessary.
What was the deal?
So I think Jack became convinced that he was being cheated. Well, he was, but so was everybody else. That was the game, the way the game was played. Later they found that that's called an attachment. If something is rubber stamped on the back of a check, and it's illegal, but nobody knew that. Nobody cared enough to investigate it.
Yeah.
It was comic books.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Neil Adams. turned out to be a pretty formidable dynamic duo yourselves. Was there a point where everything just clicked for you guys, and the powers that be at DC realized this and continued to put the two of you together? Or was it the other way around and the two of you realized it first and requested to be together?
No, I had very little to do with Neil. We were together because Julius Schwartz made that happen. He saw that we were producing kind of interesting work, and so he did that. I don't think Julie ever asked permission. I mean, I don't think that the guys in the big carpeted offices knew anything about Green Lantern, Green Arrow until they started reading about it and hearing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the rules at that time was no continued stories. Well, Julie did continued stories once a year. Justice League meets Justice Society. So I asked him, how did you get away with that? He said, I didn't ask. And they never said anything.
It's easier to apologize and ask permission.
Yeah, I mean, and generally that saying makes me bristle because people use it as an excuse for not being responsible.
It's true.
But that aside, yeah. The biggest problem comic book editors have always had is people don't meet deadlines. They don't do what they have promised to do. And it seems to be, in the freelance community, that's the way it's supposed to be. Those same people, when they work on television, hit the deadlines. It's something about comics, well, you know, you don't have to worry about that. And yes, you do. People are waiting for their children's school book money.
Yeah.
You have a whole list of people who are waiting for you to do your job, and you have no damn excuse for deliberately ignoring it. If you come down with a pneumonia or your grandma dies or something like that, sure, everybody understands that. But one guy told me, I can't even begin to think about a story until it's at least 3 weeks past deadline. And I thought, well, then you're a fucking amateur. And he wasn't. He was pretty respected. But
wow.
I thought that's an appalling thing to say. Because it's about you. You have to wait on me because I'm important.
No. The comic book culture today has had an incredible resurgence, most likely attributed to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe. Many of your stories have been adapted into feature films and other various medias. So my question is two-part one. What are your thoughts on the current state of the superhero movies?
I think they finally found out how to do it. I think the first bunch of superhero movies, they really didn't have a feel for this particular kind of fantasy melodrama. Okay, I've seen the Black Panther movie, I've seen the Wonder Woman movie, I've seen the last 3 Batman movies. Good movies, just judged as cinema. That happen to be about guys who grew up reading comics. I mean, my parents' generation and even mine, we were, taught that comics were bad. At best, literature of the illiterate, and at worst, pernicious destroyers of youth. Well, I mean, the guy who directed the last 3 Batman movies.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan.
Chris was not carrying that into the project. He simply thought it's another medium, and I'm going to make a movie of it. He sat behind Mary Fran and me at the big New York screening of the last movie. And I was sitting with a British freelance writer, and I'm so glad that I decided not to be a smart mouth, because when we got out on the street, Mary said, do you know who was sitting behind you? And Christopher Nolan. And holy cow.
Now, the second part of the question is, given the opportunity to cast, whom would you see don the cape and cowl?
Christian Bale was the best so far.
Yeah?
I know the reason for casting a comedian at the first one because I've been for 60 years friends with Mike Uslan.
Mm-hmm.
And I see him once in a while. And so he has given me the director's excuse, which was interesting.
Yeah.
It's that particular actor looks a little crazy.
You're talking about Adam West.
Hmm?
You're talking about Adam West?
No.
Oh.
The 1989
Oh,
movie.
Michael Keaton.
Keaton,
Okay,
yeah.
yes.
He looks like he might get on a rooftop and fight
Sure.
a bad guy. He does not look like a model of mental health. And I don't necessarily agree with that decision, but I certainly think it's valid.
Right. Now, when you were writing the character, did you have anybody in mind, like an actor of the day or anybody like that you kind of emulated as their speaking voice?
Well, after the ABC TV show, we thought, this stuff will never be on screens again.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't know about it. I didn't worry about it. I ran into Stanley the morning after the first TV show, and I asked him how he liked it. He said, I thought it was terrible, except for the animation in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not a favorite of the comic book communities because it was ridiculing what they did for a living.
Yeah.
And not ridiculing it with any great amount of wit or cleverness.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to bet back then, I would bet that Superman was going to end up being the superstar.
Yeah.
Because of the patriotic angle.
Sure.
And Batman's a glum character. I mean, he can't let go of having seen his parents murdered. Guy needs a good therapist.
Yeah.
No, I really believe it. In my version of these characters, the Joker, well, I think that Harley Quinn is a great character, but I would not have okayed her because the Joker, the girlfriend is too normal.
Right.
Any kind of romance is too normal for him.
Mm-hmm.
And with Batman, it's kind of the same thing. He could not maintain a relationship,
Right.
and disappear at 11 o'clock every night.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my world, he does not have girlfriends. He especially does not have Silver St. Cloud, because if he was going to have a girlfriend, it would be somebody like Talia, who is real smart.
Right. On
Not
the same level as him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are the only two people in the world who could marry each other, and they can't because she has a daddy hang-up,
Yeah.
and he has a criminal hang-up.
Yes.
So, in my personal biography of Bruce Wayne, when he gets to be in his early 40s, he will find out where on the planet Talia is, and he will marry her, and they will have the smartest and most beautiful children, and he will use his brains and fortune to help humanity in other ways.
That's
The
perfect.
story I just wrote had Leslie bawling him out, saying, "You're a hypocrite and a liar. You like violence, or you wouldn't do so much of it. You're trying to convince us and yourself that it's something you have to. You don't have to do that. You do it because you want to." And Bruce Wayne did not have an answer to that because
Yeah.
it's obviously true.
Yes.
And now I am allowed to give, acknowledge heroes as having those kind of flaws. When I wrote the original story 40 years ago, I had to soften Leslie a lot.
Mm-hmm. And my last question is, Nightfall was a huge event while you were editing Batman. But you actually wrote the novelization for Nightfall. Now, what were the challenges on writing the novel as opposed to the comic?
Well, that was an interesting mountain to have climbed. I'm glad I did it. I will never do it again. What happened was they had done a Superman hardcover, which was an unexpected bestseller. So they came and they said they're going to do a Batman and who's going to write it, and we didn't know. And I said, well, it can't be me because I am editing the comic books. Mm-hmm. I have duties with the corporation that don't have anything to do with Batman. Mm-hmm. And Mary Friend said, if you let somebody else do it, you'll never forgive yourself. Yeah. Smart wives.
Damn them.
So I went and said, I can do 75,000 words in the deadline you've given me. And the Time Warner executive, who was Dennis Cowan's girlfriend at the time, said, no, we need 100,000 words. So I said, okay. And then life got very interesting. I bought my first computer, a laptop, because I knew I had also a lot of traveling to do.
Sure.
It was the end of the year, and we always had to go to California and often somewhere else. So I had this little baby computer that I could write on when I was on planes and such. And then came Christmas time. And Mary and I decided, well, I'll take the computer with me, but we will go visit our family in St. Louis the way we had been doing for years, showing the grandparents' little grandchild there. And I made sure to get plenty of sleep because Mary couldn't drive in darkness. And we got stopped for lunch the next day, and I said, really, Mary, I'm way too tired. I don't know why. I got enough sleep, but I can't keep my eyes open. I can't drive. And she's, I can't either. No, you're going to have to. And the deal we made was, well, okay, I'll drive for an hour, and then she'll take it over. About 30 minutes into that hour, I dropped off, and when I opened my eyes, we were headed for a wall at about 70 miles an hour. And we hit the wall, and the car flipped over 3 times. And we spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in an emergency ward. But we had a bunch of Christmas presents in the back seat. And the guy who was behind us on the freeway, the witness to this, said, give me addresses and I'll deliver your Christmas presents for you. And I thought, sure you will. But okay, I know I'm going to be spending Christmas in this bed.
Sure.
So he did. He just drove around St. Louis dropping off Christmas presents.
Wow. Little Santa Claus.
Yeah. Real. I don't know his name. I gave him credit when the book finally came out. But I don't know who he was, and the people at the hospital didn't seem to know.
Wow.
But we got it done, and I wrote the last sentence about an hour before the book had to be on the press. Charlie Kochman, who was the editor of that book and the best book editor I've ever had, called me at my office and said, we need this line. And I said, I don't agree with you. There was a reason why I didn't write it, but you're the boss. Okay, here it is. Take this down. And I've been joking a lot about Jessica Alba. Charlie and I both have a mutual admiration society for Jessica. I've got a little doll, a doll of that character she played. That is on my bookshelf at home. And we still joke about it when we see each other. Best editor I've ever worked for. Now, the most successful editor, hardcover editor in New York City, his books have sold 40 million copies.
Wow.
It's the Wimpy Kid series.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So, Charlie has stayed in touch with us and stayed in touch with the editor, Man, who was a friend of everybody's.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's another thing that made this such a good job.
Yeah.
Having little adventures like crashing into a retaining wall at 70 miles an hour.
Wow.
When we got back and got interviewed by the doctors at the hospital, I said, go to whatever's left of the car and get my computer out of the back seat. It was not strapped down. It's probably a heap of random metal, but get that. So the doctor said, okay, and he went and got it. I owe the Apple company money because it was perfectly intact.
Wow.
It had been bounced around a car, and I didn't lose a day's work.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. This was a pleasure. Honor really.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Transmissions. But just because this episode is over doesn't mean the Transformers fun has to stop. Join us and other Transformers fans on our Discord chat server by visiting transmissionspodcast.com/discord. If you would like to learn more about how you could support the Transmissions podcast, just visit transmissionspodcast.com/support. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.